week, we're in the second part of a teaching series called What to Do When You Don't Know What to Do. And the hope for this series is that when you're in a situation and you don't know what to do, no matter where you are on your faith journey, no matter how you feel about God or Jesus or the church, whenever you're at a crossroads in your life and you're trying to figure out which way to go, the hope is that you'll remember the things that we're talking about in this series. We're in the second part of the series, so if this is your first week with us, I'll catch you up real quick. If you were with us last week, then this will be hopefully some helpful review, all right? So here's what I want you to think about to start off. Same question as last week, same question. What do you want your life to look like 5 years from now? Try to picture that, all right? Who's there? How does it feel? What are you like 5 years from now? What kind of person do you want to be 5 years from now? You ever thought about that? You want to be more patient? You want to be a more caring person? You want to feel more purposeful? Do you want to have greater faith, more joy? Can you picture where you want to be 5 years from now? And the question after that, then, probably a more important question, if not just as important. The question is, what will actually determine what your life looks like 5 years from now? What will actually determine the type of person you're going to be 5 years from now? Of course, there's a portion of this that's out of our control, because that's life. There are things you just cannot control. It's out of your hands. But to the extent that you can control, what actually will determine if you're where you want to be 5 years from now? If we're looking at life like it's like a journey with a destination, let's say where we want to be in 5 years, who we want to be in 5 years. Let's say it's a destination, right? Think of it like a road trip, and you know this. What's going to determine whether or not we arrive where we want to arrive? It's your direction that determines your destination on road trips and in life. If you pull out of this parking lot and you want to go to the city, that's your desire. It doesn't matter how badly you intend to show up in the city or how badly you want to go to the city. If you go east, if you're not pointed in the right direction, you're not getting there. Your direction determines your destination. And so then if we zoom in a little more and we ask, well, what determines the direction you're headed? It's simple, just like a road trip, right? It's turn by turn. It's day by day. It's moment by moment. It's step by step decisions. Your decisions determine your direction, which determines your destination. Ultimately, where you want to be 5 years from now is going to be determined by the decisions that you're making on a day-to-day basis. If you think of someone who arrived where they want to arrive, someone like Michael Phelps, right? Olympic gold medalist. He's a swimmer, in case you don't know. He was. Probably still swims sometimes. If you were to rewind his life, look back before he won the races that he won, what you'd see is someone who is headed in that direction. And if you zoomed in a little more, what you would see is that his day-to-day, moment-by-moment, step-by-step decisions were pointed him in that direction, which ultimately led him to that destination. You are where you are today. You are the way that you are today, largely because of your decisions that pointed you in a direction that led you to your current destination, right? You know this. But ultimately, what we're getting at here is that so much is determined by your decisions. Your decisions determine the direction, the destination. The ultimate quality of your life is determined by the decisions you're making on a day-to-day basis. So what we're talking about in this series is how to make good decisions. Right? Decisions matter, and we can agree on that. And I can say you should make good decisions, and you can tell me to make good decisions. Well, I'll be like, yeah, you're right. And sometimes it's easy to know what a good decision is and what a bad decision is. When I was in middle school, I took a piece of floss, and I stuck it up my nose because I wanted to see if it could come out my mouth. And it didn't make it. It got stuck up there, and I had to go to the hospital and have a camera put up my nose to try to find it. They never found it. That was a bad decision. And going into that, I knew this was probably not a good decision. Sometimes it's obvious, but sometimes it's not so obvious, right? Do we move or do we stay where we are? Do we break up or do we stick together? Do I apologize again or do I stand my ground? Do I pursue or do I wait for them to come back? Do I buy it or do I not buy it? Sometimes it's not always obvious what the good decision is. Now, when it comes to making decisions, we talked about this last week, you know this, like we all have a process for making good decisions. There are questions that all of us ask when we're faced with an opportunity. And we may not verbalize or articulate these questions, but they're questions that are running in the background in our subconscious as we're trying to decide which way to go. And so the question might be, will this make me happy? The questions might be, will this feel good? Is it safe? What's it gonna cost? Is it gonna be worth it? Is it gonna be fun? Right, there's who's it gonna affect? All these questions. Is it in line with my values? It's all these questions we have. Maybe you rely on the same questions. Maybe you don't realize you're asking the questions, but all of us have these questions. The point of this series, the hope of this series, is to give you 5 better questions for better decisions. They're questions that you can stop and intentionally ask yourself, hopefully, so that you will make better decisions. Now, these aren't questions that I made up, but they're questions that I heard several years ago. They're questions that I have personally been relying on for the past several years. I wrote them on the wall in my office. I keep them on a card that's usually in my car. They're questions that I try to keep in front of me because they are questions that have been so helpful when it comes to making decisions. Making decisions, which is what this is all about. So last week, we talked about question 1. Now, if you didn't listen to last week's message, if you weren't here, you might want to check that out online because it kind of lays the foundation. But the idea last week was that we're invited before every decision, we're invited to accept an invitation of self-examination or an invitation for self-examination. We're invited to do that, right? And so in between the thing that happened and the thing that happened next, there's this moment where we can look in the mirror and ask the first question, am I being honest with myself really? Like, why do I want to do this really? Why won't I call really? Why do I want to take this job really? Why am I upset about this really? To take a hard look in the mirror. It's probably the hardest question to ask. But if you have the courage to ask it and answer it honestly, it's like, really? It can be the question that gives you the most immediate clarity. So it lays the foundation, invites us to accept the invitation for self-examination. The question that we're looking at this week is probably my favorite question of all the questions. It's probably the question that I ask most frequently, not just because it helps me avoid bad decisions, but I feel like it also helps lead us not just to good decisions, but to great decisions, decisions that we're proud of. This question helps us understand and utilize our emotions in the decision-making process. Anyone ever made an emotional decision? Anybody? You ever been there? Like, you ever eat a funnel cake? So my uncle was telling me a story, golf story. I told you last week I've been playing golf lately. I'm still no good, but I'm trying. He was golfing behind this guy, and he's watching him. He's waiting for his turn to tee off. So he's watching the golfer in front of him. The guy's standing right next to the water, right next to a water hazard. And he hits the ball, and it goes right in the water. And apparently the guy had it at that point. And so instead of reaching for his ball, he takes his entire bag and throws the entire bag in the water. Emotional decision, right? And the guy, it lands in the water. He turns around and starts walking toward the parking lot. And my uncle's just watching him like, oh my goodness. I wouldn't have watched him. There's my new driver. It's right in the water. You know, I would have gone in and gotten the bag. So he's watching the guy. The guy gets about 100 yards away from the water, and he just stops. And he turns around. He walks all the way back. He gets to the water. He lifts up his pants, wades in, grabs the bag, pulls the bag out. He unzips one of the compartments, grabs his car keys, throws the bag back in the water. Emotional. When emotions get involved, it's hard to see anything else, right? And you know that. We've all made emotional decisions. Have you ever said something you wish you didn't say in the heat of the moment, because of the emotions of the moment? Have you ever ended a relationship because of the emotions in the moment? You ever quit a job because of the emotions in the moment? Have you ever crossed a boundary because of the emotions in the moment? There's an author, his name's Jonathan Haidt. He wrote a book called The Anxious Generation. He also wrote a book called The Happiness Hypothesis. And in the book, he talks about our way of making decisions. He says it's like we have the logical mind and the emotional mind. And if you want to think about it metaphorically, he says that the emotional mind is like an elephant, and the logical mind is like a rider on top of the elephant. And the rider plans the journey. The rider tells the elephant where to go, steers the elephant. But at the end of the day, if the rider and the elephant have a disagreement, the elephant's gonna go where the elephant wants to go. It's like that's the role our emotions play in the decision-making process. We can talk to our emotional minds, but at the end of the day, it is so hard to silence your emotions. There's a technical term for this, it's called focalism. It's like when you want something, when your emotions are involved, it's like you can't see anything else. The question that we're asking, though you can't silence your emotions, the question that we're asking today has the ability to get the elephant working for us. The question has the ability to get our emotions, the power and weight of our emotions working for us when it comes to making good decisions. We see Jesus actually live as if he's asking himself this question. The Apostle Paul, if you're familiar with him, he's somebody who started lots of churches after Jesus. He asked a form of this question several times throughout his life. But I think the place we see someone most explicitly ask this question is in the story of a guy named Joseph. Now, the Joseph we're talking about is not Jesus' dad, like Jesus, Mary, and Joseph. That Joseph, not that Joseph. This is a Joseph that came way before that Joseph. It's a Joseph that Jesus would have heard about growing up, like hundreds of years before Jesus was around. There was this guy named Joseph. Now, Joseph's story is a story of great decisions in difficult circumstances, great decisions in emotionally charged situations. His story, it's a long story. It's in the book of Genesis. I suggest that you read it on your own. It's one of the deepest, richest stories in the entire Bible. In fact, if you've downloaded the Bible Project app, which is an app we've talked about here before, if you've been on that app, they have a whole college-level course on the life of Joseph that you can take totally for free. You could really dive into it. There's so much there. Today, we're just going to scratch the surface of Joseph's story because I want you to see his thought process when it comes to making decisions. So Joseph was one of 12 boys growing up. They had a whole football team with a sub, right? It was probably a really smelly house, a lot of energy. One of 12 boys. He was his father's favorite son because he was the oldest son of his father's favorite wife. Not a great idea to have a favorite wife. And he was the favorite. Anybody the favorite in their home? Anyone the favorite child? Yeah, you know, and you're proud of it if you're the favorite. I was not the favorite. I was the middle child. But if you're the favorite, you know, it's probably great. Joseph was the favorite, and he was very open about it. His father was also open about it. He gave Joseph this coat. People call it the coat of many colors. His brothers didn't get a coat, but he did. And so one day Joseph has a dream that his brothers are going to be bowing down to him one day. And he tells the brothers, tells them like, oh, one day, even though I'm younger than you, you're all going to be bowing down to me. I think this dream is going to come true one day. That's a dream you keep to yourself, especially if you're the favorite child, right? But he tells them they can't stand him. So one day he goes out into the field to check on his brothers. They're working. He's not. He goes out to check on them. They see him coming and they decide together, let's kill him. Which is rough, but they couldn't take him anymore. And so they're conspiring, they're trying to figure out how they're gonna kill him, and one of the brothers convinces the rest of them not to kill him, but to sell him. To sell him into a life of forced labor, into a life of slavery. And then this way, they wouldn't have to kill him, and they'd profit from selling him. So they throw him in a ditch, they take his coat, they rip it up, they make it look like he was killed by a wild animal, so they have something to tell their dad. And then they sell him. They sell him to an Egyptian. And Joseph goes to work for a guy by the name of Potiphar. Potiphar was a wealthy, high-ranking military official. He was a very influential person. And here we have Joseph in a situation where he has to decide, make his first really difficult, emotionally charged decision. Like his life is looking pretty hopeless from this point. He's probably not going to have a family of his own. He's probably never going to see his family again. It's looking pretty dark and rough for him. And he's got to choose whether to give in to hopelessness, throw in the towel, or to make the most of what he has and pour himself into an impossible situation. And that's what he does. He gives himself completely to his work for Potiphar. We're told that it's like he's successful in everything that he does. God is with him in his work. And Potiphar recognizes this. And so he continues to give Joseph more and more and more responsibility until eventually Joseph becomes respected. He's trusted. He's given a lot of freedom, a lot of liberty. He's in a pretty good position considering where he started. And then he's faced with an opportunity. He's got to make a decision in an emotional situation. Here's what happens. This is in Genesis chapter 39. It says, so Potiphar left everything he had in Joseph's care. Now remember these words. With Joseph in charge, he did not concern himself with anything. Remember that. With anything except the food he ate. I love that. I think that's a great detail. You know, it's like you get to do everything. You're in charge of it, but you don't get to decide what we're going to eat. So Joseph was well-built and handsome. He's smoking hot. He's good looking. I'm sure Joseph appreciated this description. And here's what happens. It says, after a while, his master's wife, Potiphar's wife, yeah, you know where this is going. She took notice of Joseph and said, come to bed with me. And she wasn't looking for a nap. Now, hold on a second. Before we jump ahead, stop and think about this. Think about the emotions of the situation. He doesn't have a future. He's already made it to the top of his field. He's at the top of Potiphar's household. He's probably not going to have a family. His options are very limited. He's won over the trust of Potiphar. And now he can live this secret life with Potiphar's wife. Sure, it was a difficult situation to be in. It's emotional. It's tempting. But watch what he does, okay? It says he refused. He makes a great decision. And then we're given a glimpse into what he's thinking. In the ancient world, writing was extremely expensive. It was difficult to do, and it cost a ton of money. And so whenever you're reading the Bible, whether it's the New or Old Testament, and you see words, those words are there for a reason. Like they're very, very intentional. And the author here repeats what was just said. Joseph describes what's going on in his mind. He says, with me in charge, remember these words? My master does not concern himself with anything in the house. He repeats it. Potiphar's wife also knows this already. There's no new news being delivered here. Now he leaves out the part like, except what he eats, but you get it. Everything he owns, he's entrusted to my care. No one is greater in this house than I am. He says, my master has withheld nothing from me except you because you're his wife. How then could I do such a wicked thing and sin against God? It says, and though she spoke to Joseph day after day, she didn't quit. He refused to go to bed with her or even be with her. So what's going on here? What's going on? He says, with me in charge, everything's been trusted to my care. I've earned the trust of Potiphar. He's telling his story out loud. It's not something he doesn't know. It's not something the readers don't know. And it's not something Potiphar's wife doesn't know. But he's reciting his story, and he's deciding how he wants it to end. Like, look what's unfolded here. I've earned his trust. I've been given a responsibility. This is my story to this point, and I don't want it to end that way. He takes his emotions out of the moment. And he doesn't quiet them, he doesn't suppress them, he doesn't get rid of them, but he takes them out of the moment and puts them into his story. In other words, he knew that at some point, all of this was just going to be part of the story that he tells. Just going to be part of the story of his life. His life was unfolding. His story was being written one decision at a time. And for him, it's as if he steps back, tells himself his story, and decides how he wants to end. The second question is, like, when whatever you're going through, whatever situation you're in, whatever opportunity you have, no matter how emotionally charged it may be, no matter how big it may seem, at some point, it's just going to be part of your story. And when it's just part of your story, what's the story you want to tell? When your circumstances, your situation, the temptation, the struggle, the conflict, when it's just part of your story, what's the story you want to tell? How do you want to say it unfolded? When this breakup you're going through, as hard as it is to like take your emotions out of it, when it's just a story you tell, what's the story you want to tell? When this big fight you're having, it's just a story that you tell, how do you want to say you responded? What's the story that you want to tell when this season of unemployment, when it's just a part of the story that you tell? What's the story that you tell? When you've been mistreated at work, at home, by your neighbor? When it's just a story that you tell, what is the story that you're gonna want to tell? How do you want to say you walked through that season? And what it does is it gives you the ability to take your emotions, not silence them, but take them off of the moment and into the story. Like, how do I want to say that this unfolded? It has the ability to take the emotional weight of a future regret and apply it to the present moment. You'd feel it in that moment. Just a few weeks ago, Allie and I took our kids, Mia and Logan, they're 9 and 11, we took them to this show in Pennsylvania. It was a Dude Perfect show. They're these YouTubers, and so they rented out a minor league hockey rink, and there was a small little arena, and there was a show there. So we're at the show. The show's coming to an end, and I was hungry and thirsty, and so I decided before everything wrapped up, I'd run out of the arena, go into the little corridor, area where they sell all the stuff and get something to eat. There's no one out there because everyone wants to see how the show ends. I didn't care, and I was thirsty. So I run out. There's no one there. I see this self-serve drink station. And so I open up the fridge, and I go to grab a bottle of water. And all of a sudden, there's no one around. I hear from about 30 or 40 yards away, I hear this man whistling, yelling, whistling. He's making a scene. He's got a shirt on. He obviously works there. He's just on fire, yelling at me. And I've got this drink in my hand, and I'm starting to get annoyed. Why is this man whistling at me like I'm a little kid, And I think he was 40 yards away. I think he thought I was a little kid from 40 yards away. And so I have the bottle in my hand, and I'm like, I just want to tell this guy to go take a hike. This is a self-serve station. I'm thirsty. It's a bottle of water. Yes, it's $95, but it's still just a bottle of water. And I just feel the emotions. I wanted to open the bottle and drink it. He's got 30 more yards. And I just have all of these potential ways I can respond. But really, it's stopping and thinking, okay, what do I want to tell my family when I go back in there? Do I really want to say, yeah, they called security because I couldn't handle the guy whistling at me because my pride, because I was offended? It really has the ability to take the emotional regret of the future and apply it to the present moment. Also has the ability to take the emotional weight of success and apply it to the present moment. If you're familiar with Dave Ramsey, he's a financial advisor. He talks about finding the place where you spend your money, maybe it's in your wallet or on your phone or wherever you reach for your card, and putting a picture there of the thing you want. If it's a house, put a picture of a house. If it's college, put a picture of the college. If it's a boat, put a picture of a boat. Whatever you're trying to save up for whatever reason you're trying to get out of debt, he's put it there. What he's doing is he's channeling this principle. It's if you want a house to one day be part of your story, remind yourself of that future story every time you're in the present temptation. Take the emotions of the future and apply them to the present moment. Remove them from the moment and apply them to the story. When all of this is just a story that you tell, what is the story that you're going to tell? Think about this. What if Joseph's brothers had asked this question? What's the story we want to tell? For the rest of our lives, do we want to say we wanted to kill our brother and so we got rid of him? We couldn't handle those feelings of jealousy and so we got rid of him? Is that the story that we want to tell? If you think of your last regret, or maybe your last season of regret, and think what if I had asked myself this question? For me, when our first child was born, when my daughter Mia was born, she's 11 years old, I was a young dad, I was 22, and when she was first born, she had colic, and I didn't know how to be a dad. I felt inadequate. I was scared of the future. Our finances were tight. I was overwhelmed. I didn't know how to deal with a crying baby. And for that season, really for months, I was emotionally checked out of the house. I buried myself in my work because that was comfortable for me. So I looked for reasons to kind of get away. And after a while, I had to confront that reality. This is what I did. This is how I lived through that season. And when we found out we were having our second child, we talked about this. And Allie was like, is this what's going to happen again? But at that point, fortunately, I was able to remember that part of the story. Okay, there's another chance. And this time, this is not the story that I want to tell. So figure out how to do it. Figure out how to be there. If I had had this question during that season, it would have been a different story. It's a question that helps us avoid bad choices, but it's also a question that helps us make good choices, great choices. Someone who's very close to me several years ago went through a really painful divorce, and he was being mistreated, and I was hearing about it on a regular basis. the marriage was ending, and he's trying to figure out what to do, like day after day, trying to figure out what to do. And he would call me and say, I don't know what to do. This is what's happening. And I had, for the first time, just heard this question for the first time. And I just gave it to him every time I spoke to him. One day, what you're going through right now, as hard as it may be, it's just going to be a story you tell. You may get married again, and you're going to tell your future wife this story, how you walked through this. What's the story you want to tell her? You may have kids one day, and you're going to tell your kids this story. Maybe they'll be going through something similar in their own lives. What's the story you want to be able to tell them? How you walk through this? Another friend of mine was on the other side of this situation. He had made a big mistake in his marriage. He crossed a boundary and had an affair. And when I spoke to him, he was asking the same thing. What do I do? Where do I go from here? And I gave him the same question. Okay, you were caught. You made a bad decision. And now you have to pay for it. But at some point, though it's hard to see right now, at some point, this is just going to be a story you tell. How do you want to say you responded after you got caught, after you failed, after you crossed the line or did what you said you'd never do? You can't change the past, but you can decide now to change what the future is going to look like. When this is just a story, what's the story you want to tell? It's a big question. It can help us with big decisions. Also, it can help us on a day-to-day basis. This past week, my kids came up to me after work. It was like Tuesday. I was spent from work. I'm tired. I come home, and they come running, and they're like, we want to sleep on the trampoline tonight as a family outside. I'm like, oh, the four of us? All four? And the dog? And I'm like, we're going to be a taco. We're going to all sink to the middle. I'm already tired. I got all the reasons, right? It's not hard to think of reasons why you shouldn't sleep outside on a trampoline. We're going to be wet. There's going to be dew. All of it. But really, in the moment, it's like, okay, what's the story I want them to tell? That dad was just too tired to do dumb things with us? Or that we spent the night on the trampoline? I don't recommend it. Somebody came up to me a few weeks ago. I heard about a financial need. And decided he and his wife were going to put an extension on their house. And they decided, instead of putting on an extension, that they were going to write a check and meet this financial need for $50,000. That's not a right or wrong thing. But 10 years from now, waiting 1 year on putting an extension on the house and being able to say, that's the story that I get to tell. When all of it's just a story. What's the story you want to tell? For us as a church, as a community, one day, community church is just going to be a story people tell. So there's a fair every year, right outside. What's the story we're going to tell about it? That day it's really hard to park. Our parking team has to work longer hours and keep the cars out. If they're not coming to church, we got to ask them about it. Are you here for church? Are you here for the thing? What is that? Is that the story we want to tell? Or we want to say, no, we shut it down and responded to a call because our community needed us. That's the story we want to tell. We're out of time, so I'm going to ask the band to come up here. But I want to give you some questions, like last week, an invitation for self-examination when it comes to the story that you have to tell. And some of these may apply to you, maybe none of them will apply to you. But it's an opportunity to think about how our decisions contribute to the seasons and the stories of our lives. And so, when this breakup is just a story that you tell, what's the story you want to tell? When this season of marital friction, tension, distance, miscommunication, frustration, as hard as it is right now, one day it's just going to be a story that you tell. How do you want to say you responded? That you quit? Or that you figured it out? When this big family argument, this family drama, something you never saw coming. You're dealing with someone who's unreasonable, doing something unreasonable. It's just a story you tell. How do you want to say you showed up for that person? How do you want to say you handled it when it's just a story that you tell? How do you want to say you showed up for your aging parents? For family members that needed you when it's just a story that you tell? For your pregnant wife? What were you like when this is just a story you tell? What's the story you want to tell? When this diagnosis, this sickness, is just a story that you tell, or maybe even a story people tell about you. What's the story that you want to be told? When this season of relentless, unending obstacles, trials, struggle, disappointment, when this season is just part of the story that you tell, what's the story you want to tell? Your teenager's rebellious years, when that's just a story you want to tell, what's the story you want to tell? When your spouse's substance abuse is just a story you tell? When this temptation at work, this decision to cross the boundary, to do something you didn't think you'd do, to compromise, whatever that might look like, one day it's going to be part of the story you tell. What's the story you want to tell?